Jessica Prime, welcome to Perfect Health with Elaine Godley on Elastic FM. Lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Elaine. It's a pleasure.
So you're speaking from sunny Wales today?
Not so sunny Wales today.
I'm in not so sunny Nottingham. So there we go. Okay, so we're going to be talking about your experience of getting pregnant, your pregnancy, your amazing childbirth experience, what happened to you and your baby, and what you'd like to happen in the future to avoid your horrendous story happening to somebody else. And you've published this book published this story rather in a book that's out shortly called Mumpreneurs on. Sorry,
Mumpreneur on
it is. I'm getting nodded up.
It's a tongue twister. Mumpreneur on Fire 3.
Okay, Mumpreneur on Fire 3. So what's a mumpreneur?
A mumpreneur is, well, however you wish to define it, really. For me, a mumpreneur is a mum in business, or someone who works and has a child, a mum with an entrepreneurial personality. I think it means something different to different people, really, but to me it means being a mum in business.
Yes, yeah, that's my translation, or otherwise known as a juggler.
Yes, my goodness, multitasker.
Absolutely. Okay, so you're with Matt, your lovely fiance, and you hadn't been going out too long, and 5 months into the relationship you found you were pregnant. So what happened then?
Well, yeah, we found out that we were pregnant. I didn't quite believe it. I think it took about 5 tests and 3 doctors to say, no, it's right, for me to actually accept, okay, yeah, this is happening. But it was very early days for me and Matt. It was a surprise.
So when you found out you were pregnant, you got through all of the astonishment, etc. Were you happy at the news? How did you feel about the news?
I was happy, but I did struggle. It was at a time where I wasn't really prepared. You know, when you think about becoming a parent, in your mind you think, I'm going to have a house, I'm going to have a car, I'm going to have a good job, and a child will come along and it'll be really happy. And that's not really how it worked out for me. At the time, I wasn't in a very good job. I just left my my long-term career, so I was kind of in limbo in career-wise. I was technically homeless, staying with my dad temporarily and kind of bouncing from sofa to sofa and spending as much time at Matt's house as I could. And then this news came along, which was lovely news, of course, but it just was at a time where I was least prepared for it, totally not expecting it. So it was a bit of a surprise.
Okay, so you say you were homeless. So how did you get to finding a home? What happened?
Well, I suppose that's really where Matt stepped up. At the beginning of a relationship, you tend to not really know where things are going, and when something like this happens, it kind of pushes you into the fast forward mode. But Matt really stepped up, and he helped us find a home. He himself got a full-time job, and we moved into our home when Saren was 2 months old.
Okay, so you went through the pregnancy while you were homeless.
Yes, well, technically homeless. I did have somewhere to sleep.
Yeah.
Somewhere to stay. I was temporarily staying with my dad, but it wasn't my home.
Yes.
Technically,
You did.
I didn't have.
Okay, you weren't nest building at that stage. So tell us what happened. You weren't feeling too well, and you had some tests, and you had some quite devastating news. So what was that?
Yeah, so the pregnancy in general, I really struggled with the pregnancy. I was not one of these glowing, radiant pregnant women that you hear about. I was very, very poorly throughout the whole 9 months, physically poorly, and I struggled mentally. Towards the end of my pregnancy, I just wasn't feeling myself. Something wasn't right. I just had a feeling that something was up. So I spoke to my midwife. As far as she was concerned, everything looked fine. But just for peace of mind more than anything, she said that she would take a few swabs and just to put my mind at rest. And then we got a call not long after to say that they had found group B strep bacteria. At that time, I had no idea what that even was. So, of course, you go into initial panic of what is that? How did I get it? Is it contagious? What is happening to my body? As far as the midwife was concerned, all she really told me was, it's fine, it's common, don't worry about it, you'll get antibiotics and everything will be fine. And that was that.
So that was strep B, which is just a virus, well, I say just, but it's a virus infection. And I understand about 25% of women who are pregnant actually get strep B.
Yeah, so it's a bacteria, totally normal bacteria. 25%, 1 in 4 women will carry the bacteria. They're known as carriers. Generally, it has no symptoms. An adult will be totally fine. It won't harm an adult in most cases, but it's a bacteria. It's a type of bacteria in the body.
So you had strep B, carried on with the pregnancy, and you had quite an unpleasant delivery. By reading, I don't want to give too much away because obviously I want people to buy the book and read the full story. But you had a very unpleasant experience in the pregnancy, and how would you describe what happened when you were in the delivery without going into all the gruesome detail, which is in the story? But how did you feel? Because it didn't sound as though you were in control by any shape or form.
No. So I was actually induced. Going into that, as far as I was concerned, the nurses and doctors knew what they were doing. They knew about my group B strep. I'd have antibiotics. And when you're pregnant, there's this culture of not wanting to frighten pregnant women. So as far as I was concerned, I believed everything I was told. My body would cope. I'd know what to do. It would be instinctive. But going into that induction and going through that labour was totally the opposite. Things can go wrong, and I don't think that we prepare pregnant women for that. Of course, it's scary, and we don't want to scare pregnant women. But I think there's a case that we need to be educated when we go into these kinds of things. You asked me to describe it in one word, and I think I would have to say traumatizing, because it really affected me. I was not prepared for birth in general as a start, but I was not prepared also for things going wrong, which they did.
Did you, Matt, go to these antenatal classes? Were you offered those?
Yeah, we went to all the antenatal classes that we were offered because we were frightened and we wanted to be prepared. We wanted to know what to expect. They were helpful. They gave us the basic information, but they don't prepare you for when things go wrong, or what your rights are during birth, or what your options really are when things go wrong and you need to make decisions there and then.
It sounds from your story that the hospital were really quite inept in your care, and I understand that they've been given a very poor rating.
They have been. So I didn't know at the time, or I probably would have chosen a different hospital, but they were deemed to be unfit for purpose and a poor environment for women, which at the time I thought I was the only one feeling these things. I thought I was the only one struggling, the only one feeling traumatized, and it's a much larger scale problem. It's just, I think there's this culture of embarrassment. We don't want to admit that actually we didn't do very well when we gave birth.
So how did all this affect your baby? Because I mean, did you know it was a little girl before you gave birth?
We did.
Okay, so
yeah, we knew it.
How did it affect Seren, the actual trauma that you were going through? What effect, if any, did it have on her as a very tiny baby?
I don't think it necessarily had an effect directly on her. I did struggle mentally. There were days where I would need help from maths, and I'd really be unable to cope. But I think it's a maternal thing that we, as much as possible, push what we're feeling to the back so that we can be a good mum. And we're always conscious of things that we're doing, and that, oh, I must be a good mum. I must be selfless. I must, put the child first. So as much as possible, I did do that. But internally, I think I struggled more than externally. So hopefully it didn't affect Theron. But it definitely had a lot of internal issues for me.
So what would you like to see changed from the treatment that you had, which clearly was most inadequate? What would you like to see changed going forward?
I think first and foremost, education. It wasn't until I was going through this that I learned what it actually was. And I think for something that affects 25% of women, we really should be more educated about it. There are other developed countries that currently routinely test for group B strep, and the UK is not one of them. So I think first and foremost, education, testing should be available, but women should also know what their options are, because it's not until you go through this that you realise I am not equipped to deal with it.
Are there any support groups for childbirth that goes wrong?
Yes, there are plenty out there. You just need to know where to look, and it's about having the education and the awareness to know where to look. I can send you a few links for any women that do want to have a little look, but there are plenty of groups out there that will support women who are struggling.
How about the hospital? Have things changed at the hospital, as far as you know, since Seren's, how old is she now?
Seren's 2.5 now.
2.5, gosh. So in 2.5 years, has anything changed at the hospital, are you aware of?
Well, I am aware that they have recently been given a grant for quite a few £1 million to improve the maternal unit. So fingers crossed that will make a massive impact. Whether it actually has, I couldn't say, because if I'm totally honest, I avoid going back to that hospital. I do not really want to be back there.
That's understandable. Is there any way that your story can have an impact, perhaps maybe when your book is published, the Mumpreneurs on Fire 3, maybe your your chapter could be sent to the chief executive, and that input would help with the consultation progress on how they're going to spend their millions of pounds grant money?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I hadn't really considered it. I know that there have been complaints made, but I wasn't really sure whether that was the route I wanted to take. I think that a lot of people who talk about group B strep do so in a way that can be quite scaremongering, and create a lot of worry and a lot of tension. I don't really want it to be like that. I want it to be more of a case of creating awareness and empowering women to have birth and to feel positive and to know that they're in control of it.
How did you find out that UK isn't one of the countries that routinely checks for strep B?
Well, for people who know a lot about group strep, it is well known that the UK just do not test for it. They have a risk factor system in place in terms of testing if they really have to, but it's not routinely tested for.
Okay, so it was just the fact that you didn't feel well, and intuitively you asked for tests to be done. So again, that's another case of following intuition, isn't it? So many of us don't follow our intuition, and then afterwards we say, oh, I felt this was wrong, I felt I should have done this, that and the other. So following intuition is really important, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think there is nothing wrong whatsoever in educating yourself about your own health, and as much as possible taking your health into your own hands and doing what you can to make yourself feel educated and empowered.
Absolutely. Self-care is so important, and I know the National Health Service would save millions if more people took more responsibility. They say that 75% of the people who walk into A&E with stomach issues, it's all because of their diet and nutrition and their stress levels, which we all know that we can help ourselves in all of those categories. So yeah, self-help, self-empowerment is important. So thank you for sharing a bit of your story, Jessica. Let's hope people will, I wouldn't say enjoy, but normally I say about enjoy reading, but be astonished really at your story, because there's far more than we've had time to cover it today. But it really is a remarkable story, and you've certainly come out shining. And from what I read about you on Facebook and little stories and things that you say with your daughter, you've both turned out very well, even though it was a horrible start for you. So well done.
Thank you. It's a step-by-step process, and just a case of taking every day as it comes, really.
Yes, yeah, not having too big expectation, because you're still, 2.5 years is still an early time really, and that it is an important time. And a lot of people get postnatal depression without having all the drama and the awful things that happen to you. So well done. Yes. Excellent. So 2 songs, you've chosen 2 songs. What are the songs, and why have you chosen them?
The first song is Born Free by Kid Rock. It's just a song that I really relate to, about being a bit of a free spirit, and enjoying life for what it is. And the second song is You're Gonna Be by Reba McEntire, which is a song that we sang to Sarah when we finally were able to bring her home. It's not a nursery rhyme, but I kind of turned it into a nursery rhyme.
Wonderful. Okay, well, both of those songs will play after this interview. So thank you so much for spending time this afternoon, Jessica, and look forward to reading the book. How can people get hold of the book?
It will be on Amazon. I will share the link on my profiles and across my social media, but it will be on Amazon. September, I think the pre-release is officially going out. So it's called Mumpreneur on Fire 3. Okay, so people can search on Amazon for that. And your Facebook is Jessica Prime VA, standing for virtual assistant. And you are a super virtual assistant. Okay, thanks again, Jessica. Bye for now.